What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rear Naked Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Kilstein.
And I'm Drew Weatherhead, and I'd like to start by talking about how great my hair is. All you YouTube listeners, watchers today are really getting a treat because
we have Greg Jackson's dog, Mr. Boots, and we have Drew's hair. I put shit in my fucking hair today.
Oh, you did? Yeah, that's a close number two.
I feel like you
took an L there.
You need to focus on, look, if you were a coach like Greg Jackson, I feel like you would focus on, hey, the schlubby guy did his hair. Let's compliment him today so that I have some positive reinforcement and I can like bring confidence to the table.
You've clearly never been to a martial arts gym before. Confidence isn't what you come for.
No, that's not.
You come to get your shit kicked in every day and get told you're terrible. Isn't that how? Am I doing it wrong? I thought that's coaching.
I think you're bad at jiu-jitsu. I think you're not good at the sport. You guys, today's episode, are you ready to talk about pacifism? Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. It's fucking fascinating. The interview with Greg Jackson is fascinating. How fascinating is he? We, while trying to build up the show to as many people listening as humanly possible, got a guest with no social media. He is not on social media, but doesn't fucking matter because he's the best coach in the world.
Yeah, this is basically like getting an interview with the Gandhi of MMA. Like, I'm not too worried that Gandhi has no Twitter as long as I get him on the podcast. You know what I mean?
Right. You mean because they're both bald?
I'm glad you got the similarity there.
I got you.
He brought up such interesting stuff about his past that you're going to be really interested to hear, guys. You think about, like, as a guy who has brought up so many world champions through the UFC, his specialty is violence, and yet he's going to tell you about his pacifism and zen.
Oh, it's so great. And like, here's what you know how anytime somebody goes, hey man, I'm not racist, you're like, here comes something racist, like, you know it's coming, right? Anytime Greg would say, this isn't interesting, something fucking fascinating. When he was like, well, I don't have much of an interesting origin story, and he was like, a man brought me out to the desert and taught me math. I was like,
exactly.
What the fuck? Like,
my mentor built a harpsichord from scratch and then played Bach. Yeah, that's not interesting. Everybody has that story.
Oh, yeah. I got my old harpsichord has been downstairs. You out of your fucking mind. He was so fascinating, and like, he does, even though he was like really chill, very self-deprecating, was like lying down on like some fucking lazy boy with his dog on his lap, I was intimidated. Here are two jokes I was scared to make. Number one, when he brought up how he was talking about how the audience isn't trained to be like technical, and they just want like violence or story or heroics or whatever. And he goes, you get guys like Joe Rogan who are good trying to break it down. That made me think of like the microcosm of that sentence, like if you're going to encapsulate it, was back when Rogan used to do commentary with Mike Goldberg, who Goldberg's job, this isn't even to shit on him, it was to throw in, he had to do product placement. The color guy or the other guy, he had to do product placement. So like, hearing the commentary when Rogan would be like, all right, well, he entered in on an Imanari roll, he has to control the knee line, silence, and then you just hear corn nuts and like just some like horrific promotion, like, are you ready to see John Cena like you've never seen him before, the Marine? And it was just like, ugh, it was so nauseating, but like nauseating to us because we're fucking dorks. But to everyone else, they're like, how haven't I seen John Cena? Yes, and I will bring corn nuts and whatever. So that was one thing. And then the joke that I think would have killed when he said how nobody knows, no one thinks they know more than white men. I wanted to go, actually, and pretend like I was going to correct him.
Oh, that would have been perfect. You missed it. Okay, our audience gets to hear it.
This
before they even hear the interview.
This is the new segment of the show. Jamie talks about jokes he either bombed or wished he said. It's like when you walk away from a confrontation, you're like, that's what I should have said to him.
Yeah, exactly. Those shower conversations that you always win.
Yeah, we need music, or I'll just talk about the song I would have wrote. We'll figure the segment out, you guys. Don't you worry.
So we're coming off of an episode last week with the amazing Claudia Doval, who, first of all, just phenomenal interview. I really enjoyed it. It did really well. All you guys are really enjoying it. It was good to see the support for female jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, she was awesome. She's like, she followed me on Instagram, you guys.
Yay.
That's probably the most
that's the takeaway.
That's the most important thing that's happening on Claudia's Instagram right now. You guys are probably seeing a lot of like very serious stuff, but you're also probably wondering, did she go follow Jamie? She did. And we talked a lot. We talked about the interview. We talked about what happened to her, which Drew and I are going to talk about. And she's just like, she is as wonderful of a human being as like you may have gathered from the interview.
Yeah. So it's hard to tell sometimes when you're listening to a podcast when it's released is when it was recorded. So we recorded our episode. Our interview was on a Friday, and this giant breaking expose interview came out the Saturday after that. So less than 24 hours later.
Now, we didn't know this.
No, nobody knew this.
Until it happened like pretty much, I think it happened the day we interviewed her. But yeah, we didn't know. And so Drew and I, by the way, it's what everybody is talking about right now. Drew and I timed this abysmally. And I got a couple really nice emails that were like, oh man, I can't believe you got Claudia. Like, if anyone's equipped to handle this topic, it's you guys. And I was like, well, terrible news, sir. We do not talk about it. I mean, we talk about sexism, but we don't talk about it at all. And like, so I remember I was talking to her and we made some joke about the sexist. One of us made a joke about the sexist discussion we had on the podcast. And she goes, yeah, you know, it still goes on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And she was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't think I'd ever talk about it. And I was like, on the podcast. And like, I slowly had to start piecing it together.
Yeah.
There was a point where I told her, she's like, it's so sad. Like, some people are like, you know, some people are being like assholes about it or whatever. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And she sent me the video. And so for anyone who didn't see the video, she is doing an interview. And, you know, at first it's talking about just like your basic, like, there's women getting fucked over, like at the gym or in tournaments, or there is a whole thing. But she was talking about why she left her school, why she left training with De La Riva. And very glad we weren't like, what was that like after not seeing the video.
I know. We avoided that landmine, thankfully.
Jesus
not
Christ.
knowing.
And you know, it gets really bad. I mean, it from everything she said, it was like, it sounds like very predatory, very
there's an abuse of power going on there. This is the thing, though. For anybody who wants to see that story, I would very much suggest going YouTubing Claudia Doval. It'll probably be the first thing that comes up because it's getting so many views right now. And just watch it because you have to.
Our interview.
Right. After ours, clearly. I mean, YouTube can only handle so much Rear Naked Radio listeners at one time. So some of you have to divert to this video.
It's going to be hard.
That you can see, like, it's a tragic video to watch because she gets very personal. It's very hard to watch. There was you know, a sexual abuse of power going on. What I want to highlight is, as an influencer, and this is something that I forget that I have sometimes, just because I love making memes, I forget that I have like 150,000 people that see the things that I post. I put my support out for Claudia. And as a jiu-jitsu community, I was extremely disappointed in the reactions that I got out of that.
Was it that bad?
It was pretty bad. Like, every time I would check my DMs in the request section, there was just some fucking pigs. And there's
that request section is like a fucking Mad Max.
I mean, it's usually a dumpster fire. Honestly, most of it is just people sending me their own memes, wanting me to post them. But I mean, you say something that's supporting women who are being sexually assaulted, and suddenly, like, all of the trolls come out. It's not good. And this is something that I think a lot of people need to check. Like, this might be a wake-up call for people in our community, that if you can't support your own when they really need it most.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would ask, look, we are very politically divided right now. And the reason I bring that up is because people think that, you know, if I agree with one thing Trump said, suddenly I'm a Trump supporter or I'm a Nazi. Or if I got offended at this movie, suddenly I'm some like social justice warrior, cancel culture people. There's no gray area, and nuance is slowly being erased from the political conversation. So what happens is some of these guys react out of fear and projection, where the hashtag believe all women thing, you know, Rogan's talked about it, and like it came from a really important place where like women were not being listened to when it came to rape allegations. Women were being tortured mentally when they would report a rape by the police. You know, oftentimes women talk about how that is worse, you know, or it's like a second assault, right? Being interrogated. What were you wearing? Why'd you go there? Like all the cliche fucking gross tropes we all know. And then a lot of people heard believe all women, and people went, fucking all women? Because and look, I've had shit that is not true said about me. I've had crazy exes, you know, all that. So people hear believe all women and they go, well, why am I supposed to blah blah blah? I am saying, as someone who has had bullshit made up, but you know, you're in the fucking public eye. Like I've had shit made up that's not true. I've dealt with crazy women just like I've dealt with asshole guys. If you see a video like Claudia tearing up talking about this, and your first instinct is, well, what about, how do we know? Then it's like, what's going on with you? I'm not saying that like things shouldn't be taken to trial and like stuff like that. What I'm saying is, why is that your first instinct? Yeah. And your first instinct should be fucking compassion, and it should be empathy, and it should be, you know, being a semi-decent person. And like, yeah, dude, with the amount of women that are sexually assaulted, with the amount of people who don't report, it's like, yeah, my instinct is always going to be, you know, especially when you see something like that, you're just like, and if it's not, man, like you really have to ask yourself, like, why? Is it because you did something fucking creepy in college and you're like, I don't want them to win? Is it because you have like fucking mommy issues? Like, what is it that got you to, instead of being like, holy shit, no matter what happened, seeing a woman break down like that is horrific, like we should look into it. Your instinct is to be like, well, how do we fuck? What is this? And it's just like other folder nonsense.
Yeah. I don't want to beat that drum too hard, but I just want to put it out there. Like we have a beautiful art. It's a wonderful pastime, amazing innovation, community, the whole thing. We need to take care of that, because if we just assume that everything is right in it all the time, then that's when this sort of shit starts festering. That's right. All I'm saying.
You know what they say, if you assume, they say stop being a sexist douchebag on Instagram.
I remember that one.
That's it's not as catchy as the ass out of me thing, but I always screw that up. Ass out of me? Yeah, that sounds weird. That sounds like a Pornhub video. So cool. Do we made our points? Let's be decent.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's not that hard, guys. Yeah. Speaking of being decent, we put it out on the last episode that we're going to be doing these gym sponsorships.
Be decent, us.
No, we've had some really decent people get a hold of us. We're actually kind of overwhelmed how fast that came to fruition. We've got we're going to be doing bonus episodes with these people that are, you know, basically sponsoring as a student for their gym to be featured in a full Rear Naked Radio episode on them, their gym, their coach, whoever is going to jump on.
So look, we are going to make the episodes as relatable and accessible. It's not just going to be like you have to go to this gym, because it's going to be like wacky stories from the gym, you know. Drew and I we will make the episode so that, you know, it's almost going to be not like a Q&A episode with us, but it'll be the times Drew and I talk about like jiu-jitsu philosophy, and it'll be really, we're going to make it good for like small business owners, gym owners. But also we are honoring like the school, and every school has like these stories and these like beautiful moments that happened, and so we want to try to capture that in these little like mini bonus episodes. And then it helps us, obviously, because we lost a sponsor.
And it helps all our listeners because you're going to get more content out of us every week. We're doubling down.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I've been doing in my downtime, not besides like making
Pornhub?
hilarious videos and Pornhub. Guys, can we please just put a moratorium on searching for like weird stepsister stuff? Because I don't know who your stepsisters were. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know what kind of weird fantasies they had, but like the front page of my Pornhub will not stop being like 98% stepsister stuff. And like you try to put it on mute, but like I really like hearing it. I'm like into that. I've had girlfriends who like I like loud. And then every time you go, you know what? I bet I can unmute it. And then you unmute it, and it's like, hurry, because our dad is going to be home because we are related and we have to go to the family barbecue. Harder. And I'm like, and I have to like turn it off. And then you cave because like she's so hot and you know that they're not fucking related. And then that just fucks the algorithm again. And now you have supported, it's like not voting. Like you are contributing to the system of oppression. And oppression being me having to see stepsister porn that weirds me out. So anyway, stop doing that.
I have a hard-hitting question on that.
Go on, I'm listening.
Do you think that there's lesbian stepsister porn?
Ooh,
is that a thing?
Well,
can they both be stepsisters? Is that too much stepsister? And conversely, is this like us overlooking like gay guy porn? Like there's no stepsister. How do they have a chance to get on the front page? This is
interesting. Oh, like is there stepbrother?
No, that can't be, right? It's a stepsister. They've never heard of stepbrother. It's always stepsister, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Stepsisters, not in my world, but in the mainstream world, stepsisters are meant for fucking, and stepbrothers are meant for like hauntings and murder. Like, right? Like, isn't that I was like the weird Macaulay Culkin types. Anyway.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is what I've been doing besides making hilarious videos on jiu-jitsu, which if you don't follow me on Instagram and Drew on Instagram, I'm the Jamie Kilstein. Drew is because_jitsu. I have been nonstop assuming that food is just going to cease being produced at some point. And I have just been on Amazon Prime ordering like granola that I eat in a fucking day and like weird little snacks. And then when I'm there, I'm like, I should get a guitar pedal. Like I cannot fucking stop. And I was like, I'm a bad person. Amazon is treating their workers poorly. I shouldn't contribute. I'm like, I have enough fucking food, you know, because I'm trying not to go to the grocery store. I think that's why I'm like panicking, because I am trying to do the right thing and keep myself quarantined. And I was like, I want to order something good. I want to order something positive. And so I was like, I'm going to need a fucking mask, or maybe my neighbor will need a mask. So I really did this. They sent us so much free shit. And I made an order today at originmain.com, and they're pumping out masks.
What mask did you get?
Bro, the all black one. And it looks so dope. Like, here's the thing. This could be over. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to find a riot at some point to be a part of. And like, I was down at Occupy Wall Street on day one. And like, there's a picture of me at a NATO protest in Chicago pulling a girl by the purse who was about to get like batoned by a cop. And I was just like, ugh. I'm like, I had my fucking radical activist days. So
now you got a mask to match.
Now I just got to stir up some shit.
Here's my question. If everybody is forced to wear a mask in the upcoming months here, if you go outside and everybody's wearing a mask, is it going to get to the point where you can just recognize people while they're wearing their masks, so that if you were going to go, say, rob a bank, would you take the mask off so you're unrecognizable, like the Superman thing? Is this ruining bank heists for good?
Not only could this be ruining bank heists, but my fear is, with us all wearing masks, how many people are accidentally going to fuck their stepsister, which is going to lead to fucking more goddamn searches in fucking Pornhub, which means I have to watch more porn on mute, which means I like half-heartedly come. Is that what we want? Do we want to live in a world with no bank robberies and where I'm like, just, nah, that was fine. No, we want strong orgasms, strong bank heists. And that, oh my God, we're in a commercial. And that is why you should go to originmain.com. Now, here's the thing. They have already discounted. I don't even think they're making money from this.
They can't.
So our little promo code wasn't going to work because they're like less than $15. And I was like, fuck, I can't order there. I can't order from there without like giving some like Rear Naked Radio love. So I went and bought, they have these like meal replacement protein shakes thing. It was like $9 for like a pack of like however many. So I ordered that. I used promo code Rear Naked. I got $1 off.
Yes.
But I showed them that Rear Naked loves them. Rear Naked Radio loves them. And guys, honestly, go virally infiltrate originmain.com because they are the reason that the show keeps the lights on. I mean, Drew and I are now going to be doing an extra episode a week after losing money. Is it the best business plan? You know, shut up. That's why Drew was asking all those bank robbery questions.
That's right. I'm not an economist, but I know how to wear a mask.
I know how to tell someone to get on the fucking ground. So we don't have to do that. And your host cannot podcast from prison. Go to originmain.com. There's so much stuff. Man, I was looking at like all the fucking like pants and beanies and shit today. And I was like, you know, when this deadly outbreak is over, I really got to get on them for another package, for a streetwear package.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you get 10% off using promo code Rear Naked. But most importantly, you're showing them that the Rear Naked Radio pathogens support America, hate terrorists, support originmain.com.
All right, let's get to Greg Jackson.
Hi, buddy.
How are you guys?
Good.
Great.
Thank you for doing this.
No worries. Oh, and of course I got a deluge of text messages as soon as it started. There we go. Okay.
Nice. Do you remember how when we were texting, you were like, I don't have social media. What do I have to download? And then we were the idiots that forgot to send you the link.
No, not at all. Listen, I'm lucky that you guys were right. It has to be super simple for me because I'm kind of a simple guy. So I push this button and then I push that button and then I'm good.
We nailed it.
Anything beyond that, I'm done.
Dude, do you like? I said this jokingly when we were texting. By the way, we're totally recording now. I said this jokingly, but do you honestly think that being off of social media, like that's just the dream? I remember I had a meeting once with like big agents in LA, and they were like, "So what are your goals?" And I was like, "To get famous enough to get off social media and like move to the woods." And you could see them check out and be like, "We are not hiring you." But like, do you think that not being obsessed with all that, just extra noise, kind of helps you either as a coach or as like a human being?
I don't know. I think it's a person to person thing. I think social media helps out a lot of people. I think it really gives voice to the voiceless in a lot of situations and helps causes. And so I think there's a lot of really positive things. It's just myself. I guess I'm more of an introvert. I don't know. I just don't. Like, I get bored really quick, like seeing what everybody else is doing. I guess I don't care very much for that. And then, like, why would anybody care what I'm doing? Like, I'm sitting with my dog. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just, I think content has to have some kind of meaning for me as far as not just, like, it's not, it's not just peeking in your neighbor's window, which I think is very, very cool if they open the window and they say, hey, come look what I'm doing, and you're really into that.
Right.
Yeah, there's just not, and maybe it's just because I'm old. That's just not part of my personality.
Well, you're so modest, Greg. I think you could be like, hey, come check out these multi-time UFC champions that I'm training, and people would probably peek through the window.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah, it's like that. They're the stars, right? The show is for them. They're the entertainers. I'm just not an entertainer. I never wanted to be an entertainer. I'm not very entertaining. Definitely not. I'm funny looking, but not very funny. So it's just not something that I put a lot of value or time into.
Sure.
And I don't think it's more than that. I'm not down on it. I think it's a beautiful thing. Again, I think it's really helpful for a lot of people. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I love that you brought up the causes. Because you're right. It has given, and it's helped fighters. It's helped people blow up fights. As a coach, though, and I'm not trying to get you to shit on social media, but I do find it interesting where, like, from when you started, how do you feel about now there almost is so much pressure for fighters to either create a persona on social media or almost like make a separate brand and less on just go in, fight, punch, face?
Right. Well, I think that it's what a fighter has to be, right? It's as the internet has changed the world, fighters now they're entertainers first and foremost. I mean, professional wrestling got that right way early on. They
sure did.
Yeah, they figured out that a good narrative sells. People want to come to see the heel. They want to see the baby face. They want to see all of these. So they figured it out. And they went full out that just only entertainment. And we ride that line, right? So as a fighter, like an actor or like anybody else that entertains, that is the realities of your profession now. That is what you have to do. So if you don't like that, then that's not the profession for you. But I think that, right, I think it's a lot harder to be famous these days than it used to be. I think you used to be able to get away with a lot more. You used to be able to I don't think the hatred was as intense. I wasn't around for like the Errol Flynn days and stuff, but my sense of it is it's because society needs those vents, those kind of the pressure releases that people are a lot more. They use it as a platform to be angry on. They use it as a platform to be to kind of vent a lot more than I think they used to.
Well, I'd like to get your insights on something along those lines. So UFC, when it first started, it's very different than the way it is nowadays. And when it was started as a meritocracy. The idea was to fight style versus style, see who was better in the cage. And that was the entertainment. That's what people were tuning in for. Now that MMA is its own thing, it's its own style, it's its own, type of sport. That's really like, the merit has been sort of pushed off to the side to a degree. Like we're talking about, like you need to be an entertainer. You need to have a presence. You need to sell your fights. It's not like I'm so good at fighting that I'm always going to get fights. There's so many people that don't get their fights because they're not that entertaining. As a coach, is that frustrating to you, or is that something that you worry about? You have a really good star that's just not that interesting to watch?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I think that's part of when we took that kind of MMA took that next step into, which was directly because of Dana White and the Ultimate Fighter show. But when we took that step into a bigger, broader picture, we found ourselves, like we were saying, in the same position that professional wrestling saw themselves in. Average fans aren't going to know, that they're going for a deep half guard or whatever. Some jiu-jitsu guys will know it. But even jiu-jitsu guys don't know about fighting, so they don't know, well, why isn't he passing the guard? Why is he just sitting there and smashing him? Why he should be always, you know what I mean? So you then have to take that step back and what is the commonality that people are going to get into, and that's the story, right? The narrative. These guys really don't like each other, that kind of stuff. So I think that is what really. When we took that step into a broader world, then you're going to lose something and gain something. So we gained a lot of money, but we lost that kind of sporting aspect. And I think that's kind of across the board. I had a great conversation with wrestlers from the 60s and 70s that would basically get a point or two ahead of you. And these are some national champions, guys that are some of the best guys to ever do American amateur wrestling. And then they would just stall out. They wouldn't stall because you get called for it, but they would creatively stall and then get in the next match. So it'd be like a 1 point lead, and they would hold on to it and then get ready for their next match. And they would get killed in social media if they did that today. If people saw them gaming the system like that, you'd get killed. So I think that part of it is the need for the extreme, that you want to be inspired by this courage and these guys that really are going after it. And part of it is that is what sells it more than, because again, the casual fan, you got great people like Joe Rogan's trying to walk you through what's happening. Yeah. To a casual fan, listen, everybody plays football and there's not that much to football. Fighting is so intricate on each little individual part of it. Just kickboxing, just boxing, just jiu-jitsu, all of those things are incredibly intricate. So to have a working knowledge of what's happening and all of those things at all the time, most people don't have the time. But what they do have the time for is these guys really don't like each other. Let's watch them.
I got one more question on that before we move on. One of the things that is one of the more frustrating dichotomies nowadays in modern MMA is that you have these people that are trying to build their story, which is giving them more fights, giving them more higher paying fights. But then at the same time, you have the promotion, being the UFC, putting out these rankings. So what is the point of having rankings when they just sort of pick depending on who's selling more pay-per-views? Does that make sense to you? Is there something broken there?
Yeah, but I mean, yes. So that's the complication of dealing with all the intricacies of what people want to see. So the UFC has to ride a hard line, in my opinion, whereas you have to have these visual people. You have to sell fights. Like if they're not going to sell fights, then none of us make any money. So you have to have the merit there to be able to fight, but you also have to have somebody that wants to be watched. Because if you have the perfect top 10 and it's just dudes that, quote unquote, win by a point, and stall it out, no one's going to watch that. Nobody makes any money. So they have to ride a really hard line. And so as a fan, you have to make a choice, right? You could say, what do I enjoy about watching this? Do I enjoy the drama? Do I enjoy, so-and-so said this and that? Do I enjoy the pure technical elements of it? And just kind of watch it from that. But like, as far as we just live in a time now where it's not the guy that's going to win in accordance to the rules that's always going to get the next push. That's just not how, once we went to this level of kind of mainstream where everybody's talking, where I'm doing a podcast with you guys talking about MMA, which in, 94, 95 would be a little crazy to me, but here we are. So that I think that there is just stuff that you have to adapt to as our culture moves forward and as our, remember, and this was a hard thing for me. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of it, right? But for me, it was always like, well, I hope Americans would love how intelligent the fighters are being, like how smart they're being within that. And I didn't realize they're not watching it for that. They're not. They're watching it for inspiration, right? They're watching it to see what's considered a good fight, right? Is two guys showing their courage under duress. Like
that Bonner and Forrest fight, right?
Right. That's what's a good fight. Like, they don't like the Floyd Mayweathers, that it's a beautiful fight. The guy couldn't touch him, but he just hit him for, you know what I mean? Like, that's not considered a good fight. A good fight is because they're not watching it for intelligence or for the art. They're watching it for the inspiration. They want to be inspired. So I think that's really important to understand. And it was a failing of mine as well, is that inspiration is that courage. Because again, anybody can say whatever they want, right? I can tell you that I'm going to be the greatest marathon runner in history. But until I go out and run marathons, or a marathon, or a half a marathon, or more than 3 miles a day, then I might, you know what I mean? Like, people like to see that, especially in social media days, just the action, the courage, the in front of their eyes. And I think that has value as well.
And that goes back to pro wrestling, which you brought up earlier, where I remember there was a period where I was training at a pro wrestling school in LA, because I have picked every career path to disappoint my father. And I was doing it. And I remember one day, someone from the WWE was explaining to us, he was like, it comes down to, because people were trying to do all these like overly fancy moves. And he goes, it comes down to storytelling. Even grown adults, they want to see the hero who stays pure in like the face of adversity. And even though the heel will cheat and poke eyes and headbutt, eventually using just courage, the good guy will prevail. So there is something in our brains, and maybe it's because we're being treated like shit at work. Maybe it's because we're in a relationship we're not happy with, or whatever, that when we watch TV, we want to see people being brave and then the good guy hopefully winning, so that we can feel good and just kind of be like, all right, there's good in the world, at least for like a minute,
Right. I think that's part of it too, but I take a little more cynical view. I think that people just like to see courage against whatever, like they like the bad guys being courageous too, like the new paradigm of the anti-hero, but that's the real commonality. What gives those guys respect is courage. So that's why people want to watch them. And I think that people want to, it's almost masturbatory in a way. Like they want to, you want to surround yourself by that courage, but also you get to kind of vicariously experience what they're doing. So I think that, for me, it was a real growing experience moving from the purity of the art and the combat to understanding what it is. And again, people like Dana knew that from the get-go. Like Dana's a genius in that he understands fans. He knows what they want and what they don't want. It's one of the most brilliant things about that guy. So he understood that. I mean, it's why he's a promoter and I'm a trainer, right? He understood that in a way that I'll never understand. But because my side's the art, my side's the art of violence.
Well, I wanted to, we have to name the episode The Art of Violence. I want to go back to, you said this very casually in passing, and I could hear listeners of this podcast in their gis angrily throwing their computers to the ground when you said even some jiu-jitsu guys don't know about fighting. When you get a really good strictly jiu-jitsu guy who comes in and wants to transition to MMA, what are the kind of most cliche problems you see, besides obviously like striking, but on the ground or maybe even in the clinch to get it to the ground? And then what are things that even the average jiu-jitsu player who maybe they're like a really good purple belt, but they originally got into jiu-jitsu for self-defense and they don't train MMA or they don't train with strikes, what are some ways that they can train, making it more realistic?
Well, realistic is a very subjective term. So here's the number one thing that jiu-jitsu people have a hard time in the transition with is getting punched on the ground. And what that means is they're used to setting up very specific, what I always call spider webs, wherein if you go here, they go there, I go here, you go there. That changes a lot when somebody starts banging on your dome a little bit. It just does.
Yeah.
So moves and positions that you're normally very comfortable in and at a pace that you're usually very comfortable in change a little bit when you start taking physical damage and you can no longer sit in that position and wait or try to push. So some positions become untenable and some positions keep tenability, but that's one of the big things. And then the second thing is I would be like, why bother training unless you want to do it for the art's sake. Jiu-jitsu is the best art for self-defense, as long as, of course, it's one-on-one. And if it's not one-on-one, you should be running.
Yeah, right.
So that realism, like police officers, people like that for sustainment training, even people in combative soldiers that I work with, jiu-jitsu is where it's at because it teaches you how to control somebody. And that's most of, so you don't want to start getting into a boxing match with some guy in the street. You have no idea how hard he hits. There's no weight classes. He didn't say, oh, I'm sorry, you're too small for me. Like jiu-jitsu is where it's at. You
give up 10% of your purse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not a lot of that. So jiu-jitsu is where it's at, like getting in close, controlling people, getting very good at that, finishing it non-violently if you can. Those are the things that are super important. So there's no better street self-defense thing than jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu should be what you do. Now, if you're talking about the art of MMA, now then that's like 5% of the world, and well, I'm sure way less than that. 1% of the world is really, really competent in all of those different arts, and that's fine if you want to pursue that, but if you just want to have a workout and you want realistic self-defense, you don't need much more than jiu-jitsu. Again, if you're fighting 3 dudes, like you can be the best kickboxer in the world and, you knock the first one out. Meanwhile, the second one hits you at the same time. I mean, there's ideas you can get better at it. But yeah, that's just like the whole realistic, unrealistic part of street fights are from street fighters that are only been in certain parameters. These guys haven't street fought in houses and parties and street fought in parks. I mean, everywhere you go is all these different scenarios that you have to work through, and it's just problem solving. But having a good base of, you should throw some punches, right? Obviously, you should be able to do a 1-2 and run away.
Right.
But just having, there's so many times and you're going to be using chairs and whatever. I mean, it's a street fight's a street fight. So sometimes, like you get in the YouTube videos of 2 guys literally in the street in front of a car duking it out. That's a great time for jiu-jitsu. If you're in, you never know where you're going to end up. So like the whole realistic, non-realistic thing in street fighting to me is obviously there's ridiculousness and there's plenty of it out especially on the internet where you can watch these guys do like step out of the way of a double leg and do an elbow strike to the end of whatever. There's like absolutely ridiculous stuff, but most of like real, like if you're not doing a road rage incident or something like that, real self-defense stuff, you want to use your environment as much as you can anyway. So there's the realistic stuff. Jiu-jitsu is where it's at. For MMA, however, though, it's very different. And it's hard to understand until you really experience it. That's why when jiu-jitsu people say, "Oh, I've got to fight against somebody," I'm always like, "A fight? Oh, a jiu-jitsu fight?" Right? But that's their terminology, right? But it still to this day catches me. Well, yeah. Not really. I mean, it is a contest, but it's more like a wrestling match than a fight, really.
It's fight light.
Right. But they, you say what you say, but still it is there's nothing like getting punched in the face, especially when you're trying to set up. Now, listen, if a guy doesn't know anything and you're trying to set up a jiu-jitsu move, he's not going to be able to stop you unless he's just lucky with a big punch. But guys that know how to shut down a little bit of jiu-jitsu and then start whacking you in the head, it's just a very different experience. Some things go beyond reductionism, right? And that's where a lot of fighting happens, is in that emotional space where you can't say, well, everyone's always going to react this way to these certain stimuli. So in a way, it's the limits of, because in jiu-jitsu is very much like chess. It has a very, obviously there's some emotional factors, competition, you can get fatigued, both muscular and your lungs can burn out on you, etc. But it is a different feeling when someone's really trying to hurt you in a way that when they hit you, it hurts consistently, right? Like 1 or 2 shots isn't a big deal. 4 or 5 or 6 shots to the head, you're like, well, this isn't fun. I better get out. And so just understanding that paradigm, I think, is very important.
Awesome. Yeah, it's just the way you're talking about this reminds me of back when I used to train MMA years and years and years ago. My instructor was Jason McDonald. And,
Jason's great.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was in the peak too. When I first started training under him, he was training for Damian Maia. So he was kind of like just cresting that hill. So he's a good coach, but great with jiu-jitsu. But he used it in a way that was counter to the way that I was being taught at my jiu-jitsu gym. He was like, if I get to half guard on top, you're dead. I don't have to pass your guard. I love getting in a half guard. If you let me to half guard, it's over. He just smashes you with elbows and it's done. Like, it's totally different.
Yes. And that's true. And jiu-jitsu, you still can, it has to be part of the arms race. It's just being aware that it isn't the cure-all, end-all if you are going into the sport of very high-level fighting, or if that's just your passion, like you're just really into it. But you don't, especially as you get older, like jiu-jitsu is really, like I tell everybody, just do jiu-jitsu. Stay away from MMA. Unless, listen, if you're going to find yourself consistently in street fighting situations, then you should probably, MMA is where you want to be.
Or therapy. Maybe.
Right, yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're making some terrible decisions wherein, and everybody's bringing guns and knives. Anyway, jiu-jitsu is a beautiful, beautiful art. It's so intricate. It's so amazing. And it should give you everything that you need. You don't need to go as a 40-year-old martial artist. You don't need to go to a MMA school that's hardcore, fighting 21-year-old kids that really are like, I've got testosterone all over me, I'm going to go after it. It's dumb. That's just
I will say the one thing that I miss about MMA is like the times I've gone into MMA schools to either like help a friend or just see friends and train. If I ever spar against, and they could be my size, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, but they're a UFC fighter, or even like a high-level amateur MMA fighter, the level of just fucking grit and tenacity, like it just doesn't stop at all. And that is one thing that I do love about the MMA mentality. And I don't know if it's, when you're simulating ground and pound drills, even if it's just on your own, there's something more like primal about it, where I'll just work harder. Where if we ended a class with like shrimps, I would be like, all right. There is something about like MMA men and women that it's very, that intensity, it's hard to replicate unless you're at like the highest of level comp class in jiu-jitsu,
Right. Well, I think there's something to that, but that's your personality. Like if you've got, like I said, if that's your path, like you've got this
fire in you and it has to come out, then you have to do MMA. I mean, you can still do jiu-jitsu, right? But like there'll always be something that you're missing, leaving the striking out of it, if that's your path. But I don't think that's most people's paths. It's very few and far between.
For sure. I wanted to ask you about, I feel like I have heard tales of your origin story for like decades. Like it's some sort of like 90s martial arts movie. Like it's like a step away from like you did it to like avenge your parents' murder or something. Can you talk about your origin and kind of how you know, lots of people back when you started were kind of just finding any way possible to train, but the fact that you went from garages or wherever you were to now training the best fighters in the world is like a pretty fucking cool story.
Well, I wish my origin story was more entertaining. I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It is a rural, poor state. It is one of us in Mississippi and Louisiana. Basically, we always fight for who's the poorest, especially in children poverty. So we come from a poor place. I was raised in the poorest part of the poorest state. And so that poverty gives you a lot of drivers. One of the drivers is, you know, there's not a lot of positivity around you, or there can be not a lot of positivity around you. You can find yourself in very negative circumstances very quickly. And then we have a very Hispanic tradition here, New Mexico being the Spanish came and they kind of left a legacy there. So we have a very kind of a machismo Hispanic mindset that is hard to understand. A lot of people will hammer me on, well, what do you mean? Like, if you didn't grow up there, it's hard to understand it, but it exists. So their big thing is fighting, right? Like New Mexico and Albuquerque specifically was a very fight town. So anyway, in the long story short, I did not want to get beat up. I thought it would not be fun to be beat up. I thought that might be less, in order to be yourself, in order to say what you want to say, to have respect, to not have to like run down streets and alleys. You have to learn this thing to do. And so that's what I learned to do. I started pretty early on. I was raised by pacifist Quakers though. So my early struggle was the appropriateness of violence. Like, when is violent appropriate and when is not? And so most of my young life would be not fighting when I should have, and then getting really mad at myself. Like, oh, well, now I'm going to have to fight twice as much, right? Because they jump on weakness. Because again, the ideology of nonviolence is a beautiful thing, but it's very dependent on, that strategy is dependent on some important circumstances, none of which I was privy to. There was nobody going to come and save me walking home from school. Like, nonviolence revolves around the rest of the world caring what is happening. And if there's no internet, so there was no voice to that. So you then are reliant upon yourself. No one is going to come and act. Like, nonviolence is a very viable strategy for social change. There's a lot of stuff that is a very viable strategy for. For me, it was not viable at what I call the bottom line. So I would fight too much and get suspended from school and kind of go too far down that path. And then I was overcorrecting back and forth. So it took a while for me to figure that out. Till I was probably about a senior in high school, which is right when I opened my school, starting to train martial arts stuff. So it was a long journey with a lot of mistakes, a lot of missteps. But yeah, I'm still alive, so I got out of it.
Yeah, you did martial arts, right? Do you think you got? It was so interesting when you brought up the pacifist stuff, because you're right with the nonviolence, like. You know, in times like you look at the civil rights movement, you look at Gandhi, you look at, you know, whatever, it's like that was fighting back in a way where they're like, I'm gonna get the shit kicked out of me in order to prove this larger, you know, point. Do you think you learned or still apply anything that you learned from kind of that Quaker pacifist upbringing, whether it's just seeing martial arts as more of an art and less of a, like, you know, like, does that tie into why you're so fucking calm in these like insane title fights, which I think, like, I wanted to ask you about anyway. Are you glad you were raised that way? Does it still play into your life?
I'm very glad I was raised that way. I think what Quakerism taught me what my parents taught me is that happiness comes from helping people. So that brand of Quakerism that I was raised with gave me a lot of lasting gifts, and that's one of them. And again, there's missteps all over the place, but sure. That kind of fundamental core idea never really left me, which I think is very good. My mentor, so I have my parents who are great parents, and I have my mentor, Jim Dudley, and he's the reason that I look at, my parents are both very, very intellectual, but he's the real reason that I look at the world the way I look at the world. He's a polymath. He's a Renaissance guy. He's the guy that he built his own harpsichord, literally built his own harpsichord out of scratch, and then plays Bach on it. Like, he's that guy.
Jesus Christ.
So he would take me, and he saw something special in me when nobody else really did. And so he would take me out, and I don't know how long. A long time we would go walk in the desert, and just the whole time he's just teaching me. So I would be walking along, and I'd be running alongside because he would keep the same speed. You can ask his biological daughters. He keeps the same speed no matter what. So you're literally jogging to keep up with him. And then he's just teaching you about fractals and math and philosophy and music. And so basically I skipped along next to him for the majority of my youth. And so I had this like kind of oasis place. My house was a very oasis place. I was very lucky there, and I was lucky with him. And then I would go back out into my surroundings, which were the opposite of that. And so I had these two worlds that were always competing against each other, I think. And so I'm a product of both of those. I'm a product of the way he taught me about art and science and all of these things. And I'm also a product of the environment outside of that, which are some of the best people on earth. The South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico has some of the best people you'll ever meet. But in this weird way, they're right next door to the worst scumbags you could, you could ever understand. So it's just a weird place. It's a weird world, and I'm super fortunate I was raised there. I wouldn't change a thing.
That was a fascinating origin story. You were a liar.
Yeah.
That was incredibly fascinating.
I've got a question about your coaching style. So Jamie already touched on how oddly calm you are in the cage in between rounds, and that's kind of like a personality trait people love to talk about with you, which is awesome. It's amazing. I really vibe with that myself.
Yeah, if I was coaching, I'd be like, we got to get the fuck out of here.
But one thing that I noticed as an observer in your camp specifically is you have so many high-level athletes, but they don't look at all the same in their style. Every individual person has their own style. Now, this, first of all, it makes it very interesting I'm assuming from your perspective as a coach, trying to bring them to their best version of themselves, as opposed to having a formula to fit them into, which maybe isn't the wrong thing to do, but it's very different. Like, we were talking to Craig Jones an episode or two ago, and he was talking about the Danaher system in jiu-jitsu, how they all play the same game with the same system. So when one of them loses, they can adapt that like the Borg into their philosophy, and now they all learn from it. But conversely, with you've got people like John Jones, like Carlos Condit, like Holly Holm. All of them have very specific flavors to their fights that I really enjoy watching. But how do you use your coaching to help them individually? Because you're doing it so well, clearly, with all of the champions that you're producing. But I imagine it's a lot of RAM that you have to burn to keep up to so many different paths.
Yeah, that's a very complicated question. So as to the calmness, that's just anybody that has been in a lot of situations over and over again. You will develop a calmness to it, right? So I don't know how many fights I've cornered, but I will tell you there's nobody close to my record. Like, since whatever we started, 94, 95, it used to be every week, multiple fights. So I don't know if anybody's ever going to touch the amount of fights as far as MMA. I'm sure boxing, they've touched it, but over the last 20 years that I've done. So imagine every mistake you could make in a podcast. Imagine doing 1,500 podcasts, but doing every mistake you could make or stand up or whatever you do. You know what I mean? Like, you make show after show after show after show. You have to, that'll keep you calm. Two is if you are just doing the same thing over and over and over, that gets pretty boring. So it's a lot of fun to have new styles, new parameters, new questions, new answers, different ways to do it with different people. I think that's very important to keep you mentally, because I hit my burnout. Obviously, with that pace, you can't keep that up forever. So I hit my burnout, went through my burnout, I've come out to the other side of my burnout. But yeah, that individualness is what to me makes the martial arts fun, because everybody has the same information, right? Like I love Danaher's one of my dearest friends. I love him to death, and that's a great system that he has. Like he's a very practical way to do it. And for myself, I try to tailor the information to the style of the person that is competing. And so fighters can do that on their own, but I feel like you can develop a little bit better of a style for the individual that way. Not knocking John's style at all. I think his is obviously super effective. He's cranking out killers there. So I don't think one way is better than the other. It just keeps me interested, and I feel like it helps me. That's how I feel like I can help the best, is to say, okay, here's the things that you do well, here's the things you don't do well, here's the space you want to explore, here's the space that we need to develop.
So you don't find that it's too much energy, it's what you want to stay active?
No, it's too much energy once you reach a certain threshold, right? Like everybody's got their threshold. I don't remember who said it, but somebody said Napoleon only started losing battles when he couldn't see what was happening, right? When the battles got so large that he couldn't get his reports on the wings fast enough. And I think there's something to that. I think that everybody has that threshold. I mean, certainly that's what burned me out. But I think I would be equally burned out doing it any other way. So, it's so much fun to have a connection with a fighter that is asking for help on a path. This is my path. I would like to develop my combat style. And so to assist with that, to help them, I think is the fun for me. Like that's, and again, it goes back to my Quaker roots, right? Like helping people, like, okay, well, I'm going to help you individually. There you go.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to ask about John in like a non-hacky MMA journalist way, which is, shit, I was there because Joe used to get me out to fight. So like I was there for when he beat Bader and like they had the big announcement. I was there like with his, like next to his fucking family during the Shogun fight. And I'm just such a huge fan of his. When do you think mentally he is sort of like thriving the most, right? Like it's easy to talk about his missteps, but I'd sort of almost rather trace like when he's at his best, like when he's on track, and maybe like reverse engineer it to when, why things kind of keep going off the rails.
Well, I think John, just his personality he's very outgoing. He's not super, in some ways he's super consequence oriented. In some ways he's just like, he has to go be wild. And there's guys like that. So again, growing up the way I grew up, like John's normal to me. Like guys that are wild like that, that's nothing to everybody else. They're always mystified and like, what is, why does he, but to me, that's the people I grew up with. It's nothing abnormal about good guys that have to, like, they have some fire in them, and the fire just sometimes burns in places it shouldn't burn. And that's just John. That's a lot of the guys. And you guys, there's better, like when I worked with George St. Pierre, who's another very, very high level fighter. He had that fire, but he was able to put it in certain parameters where he wouldn't go off the rails. He would, he still liked to go out and have fun, but he was a little more controlled on it. So some guys are more like John, some guys are more like George. But those guys with that level of intensity, that usually they've got to have some kind of release, some kind of so the fire has to get out somewhere.
Right. So so do you think that, two things off of that? One, do you think almost this, like, because he was, this golden boy for so long, that was almost that one of the reasons people are so outraged is because maybe that just never was the case, and he was still just sort of like a young, wild Albuquerque kid. And then the second part of the question was, do you think that personality, I can tell you the reason I got good at guitar and jiu-jitsu and stand-up is because I have a fucking addictive personality, which is also why, like, if I did cocaine today, tomorrow I would be the best cocaine dealer in my city. Do you think in a weird way it's like that addictive personality that chasing whatever ties into also why he's great? And then how do you find that balance?
I'm not so sure about the addictive personality. I'm sure that's a factor of it. I'm not trained enough as a psychologist to know. But I will say that I think that people don't like John, not because he's wild, because there's plenty of fighters that are wild. I think people don't like John because he's so good. And they really like it. That's what it comes down to. I remember I've gone through several champions now, and I've noticed that is a thing. Once you elevate to a certain standard where you're the kind of the gold standard of where it's at, you will get a lot of backlash. And so for different people, it's different. For George, GSP, again, who's the other really high, super high level guy that consistently that I worked with, it was boring. Like now you don't say that about George. He's very respected. But when I was there going through that stuff, like he was tons of backlash, tons of people. Yeah. So I think that that's just the backlash that people go after with John. I think that it's entertainment, right? Like John's wild again. Well, now this gives me a reason to not a lot of people are like you saying, well, can you find a more positive way to do it? Most people are like, oh, good, he's messed up. So
bury
now
him, Twitter.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what John signed up for. That's what this job is. This job is to be a sounding board for negativity as well. So when you're wild and that fire goes out of control sometimes, that's just the consequences. But keep this in mind. John could be, it's just people. Like John could be like, what's the movie with the asteroid coming down? Oh, my Lord. Basically, do you remember where they flew onto the asteroid? It
was Bruce Willis, right?
Yeah. So like in the real world, Bruce Willis would blow the asteroid up, come back, and people would be like, well, my life isn't any better. Who cares that you saved the world? Fuck off, Bruce. You know what I mean? Like,
Did you see what he tweeted 10 years ago? Cancel Bruce Willis.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, so you could save the entire planet and people are going to be angry at you because it's not about what it's entertainment. It is what is it about is it's a sounding board for people to express whatever. Listen, if you're a happy fan, then you're like, oh, John, you messed up again. I wish you wouldn't do that. If you're an angry fan, then you're angry, and that's where that comes out. So it's just really the type of person you are.
Yeah, I remember that happened so strongly with Rousey, where it was just like, oh my God, this woman who brought female MMA to the UFC, and then with suddenly she's just getting booed. It happened with Cormier. It happened with, so many people. Is there part of you? I mean, clearly you care a lot about John. I assume if he was a awful person, he wouldn't be at your gym. Is there part of you that's like, when it does happen, that you're just like, fuck, like we have to readjust something? Or do you believe he's just going to grow into it? And like you said, he's just a young athlete being a fucking young athlete who got a ridiculous amount of stardom. It's like the Justin Bieber thing. Like that's a lot to handle.
It is. I think it is a lot to handle. And if you haven't walked in his shoes, I would be hesitant to judge him. There's more Quakerism for you. But I would say that, I think that John has a lot of challenges and that he has to work through himself. Like you can't, outside of his immediate family, you can't come in and be like, now Jonathan, like he's a grown man. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody has all these advices for fixing John's life, but their own life is crazy. And I think there's a lot to that. I think that you just say, well, I hope he finds his way and figures it out. And when he does, he does. I mean, there's nothing anybody can do. You can be positive. You can try to, help him be a positive person and push him in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's his job he's a man and he's going to have to say, okay, I'm done doing this or I'm not done doing this. But I think that there's he's not a high school kid and I'm not a high school coach, right? Like, and I think that there's a disconnect there for a lot of people because again, if you don't have the experience of doing it, right? And I think that's one of the weaknesses and strengths of American culture. Every American thinks that they're the smartest guy in the room. I love people that yell at football screens and stuff, like they're yelling at it, like, you know what I mean? Like they know better than the guys in there, right? They're no better than those coaches and those athletes that are doing it. But for some weird reason, it just worked out. We're there on the couch, like for some reason. You know?
This close to the NFL.
Right, exactly. But they know, right? But we do that with everything, especially the worst are white American males. We are the worst by far. Like we know, because I'm a real estate guy, I know about epidemiology. Because I'm a this, I'm a that. You know what I mean? Like it's prevalent where people are. Because you're successful in one area, you know about all areas, and I think that's one of the big dangers that we have. But I also think it's like we also have that like, well, we'll just get in there and do it attitude, and that's a very American attitude as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like we're not like there's not a lot of overt class structure where you're like, oh no, you would never know about that, because again, you have the part of the American dream is like a guy that doesn't have anything coming and getting it going, being able to push to places that, well, you shouldn't be able to do that. You don't know. There's my Mr. Boots.
Yes, this is what I was fucking waiting for.
For those listening, the dog just entered the chat.
You're finally gonna.
Sorry, they had Mr. Boots just kind of came in there.
Oh. No, that's right. We're trying to get our YouTube numbers to match our podcast numbers, so that should help. That should put it over.
Anyway, where was I? Got derailed by Mr. Boots. Yeah. So I think that's a double-edged sword. So you have a lot of people that haven't walked that path, making opinions there instead of asking questions and trying to get more knowledge. People like you guys are super important. People like Joe Rogan, because they're the translators from one thing into the other, right? Like you are the people that say, "Here's what you're watching. Here's what you're looking at," and so people absorb that. But then there's a false equivalency where, like, just because I hang out with scientists doesn't mean that I'm a scientist.
Right.
I think Mr. Boots is we're going to have to walk and talk while he gets it. Bootsy, do you want a treat?
Oh my God.
See those ears poke up.
Bootsy, jeez.
All right. We'll walk and talk.
Cool. I got one more question left for you.
Well, now I have 10 dog-related questions.
Before it turns to the dog podcast.
We'll end on Drew.
So with athletes, it's a lot more of an obvious answer to this question of what do you want to leave behind as your legacy? So a lot of people who are in a sport, they want to win the most titles. They want to have the most wins. They want to have, they want to set records is essentially mostly what the answer is. For a coach, it comes to a different idea stream. Have you thought about like what is the legacy that I want to leave behind in this sport as Greg Jackson, who did so much? Is it you want it to leave behind a book, a memoir? Do you want to leave behind a coaching style? Do you want to leave behind a gym that carries on your name? Do you want to leave behind more champions than anybody else? What is, if you were to get out of what you're doing day to day now, what would be the thing that makes you the most grateful, I guess, for your contributions?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, everybody, I think you're a competitive person, so you chase a lot of those goals, right? Like, and everybody has a little bit of an ego in whatever job that they do. And so that, sure, like all of those things would sound very nice, but they're all transient, right? Like, I would like to be remembered as somebody that loved my art, that remembered as somebody that was adequate at what he did. But I think that like trying to chase, I used to, so let me put it this way. When I was younger, yes, I wanted to chase all of those goals, right? I wanted to say, we had the highest winning percentage or whatever the new goal. Then we got that. And that's the problem is that when you'll reach your goals, right? Like you get them. Like, oh, we did have that for a long time. Oh, okay, well, I want to have the most champions at once. Okay, well, we kind of did that for a while too. And then, okay, well, I want to do each generation that I've trained of fighters at least one world champion. Okay, well, then we did that. Like, so then, well, what do you keep chasing, right? Like, what do you, when you get what you want, as you do when you're older, like, what do you keep chasing? Like, why? What more? You know what I mean? I've had a lot of world champions. I've worked with two of the considered pound for pound best ever. So then why wake up tomorrow? Like, you already did that. Like, so what is the thing that keeps you going? For me, the thing that keeps me going is the process itself. Like, I enjoy the process. I like refining the process. I like getting better at the process. But that's the thing. What I'm getting as I'm getting older is I'm trying to let go of a lot of the kind of benchmarks, because I hit a lot of them already. And, you know, people will pass me. People have passed me already. People will pass me again. They're going to have to work to get to the amount of fights I've cornered, but somebody will do it. There's going to be some kid, even, you know, this year, next year, 200 years from now, like whatever. So I think the legacy that I would like to leave is a legacy that a lot of people have already left, is that be in love with that process, like really get into the outcomes, then take care of themselves, right? Like if you worry about just perfecting all the little pieces of it, including the execution, right? That doesn't mean that you like do everything up until, let's say, the fight, and then you're like, well, okay, you know, the process is done. That's not how it works. The process is the fight and the win or the loss. But if you live for that, to get as good as you can at that, then I think that you've got something to hold on to. And I think that even because you can never get it all the way right, and thank God, like, can you imagine how bored you'd be if you got it all the way right? Like, I couldn't imagine. My mom would tell me when I was a little kid, you know, when you die and go to heaven, God, because I was an inquisitive little kid, so God will answer all of your questions. And I said, well, that sounds like hell. Like, imagine not being able to learn anything. You know what I mean? Like, just sitting there knowing all, like, that would be, I don't know if that's, which is always my question to my Zen friends, is like, enlightenment, first of all, it has to be kept up. Like, and that's the thing about enlightenment, is that even these guys that you read about, or at least in the Dogen School of Zen, which my dear friend Dave's a part of, even these guys that read about enlightenment, it's not like enlightenment and then I'm out. Like, high five, everybody, I'm enlightened, and then they leave. They still have to go meditate every day, because enlightenment isn't a destination, right? It's not something that you get. It's just another step in that process. And that was an important thing for me to understand, is that you're not, like, even when you see no moon in the water or whatever koan you're reading, there's no, it has to be kept up, right? Like, it's not something that you just achieve and then okay, well, now I'm going to be, I don't know, a computer scientist or something, whatever. Like, it has maintenance every day. You have to have maintenance on it every day. And so for me, I'm just grateful for that. And so I guess the legacy I would like to leave would be that, no legacy sounds too stupid, but like, just a guy that loved the process, and whatever good I did out of that, there you go.
That was so beautiful. Last most important question, is Mr. Boots a good boy?
Mr. Boots is a very, he is, you know how you have some special dogs, like there's normal dogs and you go through your life. I've grown up with dogs from day one. Mr. Boots is one of those very special dogs that's like, he's super empathetic. Like, if you're upset with something, then he's sitting on your lap. If you're excited to go, he's running around. He's a very empathetic part. He hangs out, and you can kind of see him here. He pretty much hangs out with me all day.
Yes. I love him so much. Hi. Hi.
Are you a good boy, Bootsy? Do you like being a good boy? Do you want a treat?
Oh my God, his little eyes. What do you think about?
Okay, there go our YouTube numbers. We're skyrocketing now.
Forget all that John Jones gossip. I just want Mr. Boots. Listen, man, I appreciate this so much. It was an honor talking to you.
Oh, the other way around. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Love talking about martial arts.
Oh, it's awesome. The best. Yeah, anytime. You're always welcome.
Thank you, sirs.
All right, brother. See you later.
All right. Bye.
Guys, that was Greg Jackson. You can follow him.
On the UFC.
Yeah, on the UFC. You can turn on your television. All the UFCs will apparently be held on an island. I don't know what the fuck's happening.
Oh, let's talk about that for a second.
But it's going to have already aired. So like something even more insane could have happened. I'm literally picturing it like a move, like actual blood sport where they're all being like ferried there. Like, I don't know what's happening.
This could go several different directions. If we want to take it down the path of movie storylines, this could be the Mortal Kombat meets real world. This could be Austin Powers, where the bald white guy has a volcano island where his lair is.
You really do think in meme comedy. It's so interesting. Watching you like pitch ideas is so fascinating from like a writer's room point of view, where I'm like, oh right, it's very visual. Like the bald guy, I can like I picture it in me. It's so cool. Anyway, yeah, that sounds insane.
It is insane, but let's think about the times we're in. That's kind of the move for Dana to do, right? Is it even not surprising? It's
no,
like, well,
no, it's not.
Guys, I mean, we can't fight in the city. Let's buy an island. It was either that or the moon.
We got to swim. There's only enough room for me in the plane.
Look, guys, the moon's still on the table. We're gonna try the island, okay?
Hey, Tony, when you hitchhike a raft to the island, try not to get injured. Can't mess up this fight. I'll fucking kill you.
Fucking goof.
I'll fucking beat the shit out of you. Yeah, it is very weird. I mean, it might be one of those rare times we have to talk about an event like next week. Like, I don't. It's mad. It's fucking madness. What if Gaethje wins? Okay, we don't know. It already aired. We should not be talking about this. You tune into the show for weird evergreen porn talk and Greg Jackson's dog. We know why we're here. Now, guys, listen. We have an Instagram page right now.
True story. This
Follow
is new.
it. It's brand new.
Yeah, new since the last episode.
It's growing very quickly. It is at Rear Naked Radio. So now you can tag me, Drew, and the show and hopefully lead people to that show. Our friend Helen Harper, who's an amazing fighter, she's posting exclusive content and like old clips from shows and shit like that. And she's also forcing Drew and I by threat to make original content for that page. So it's not just going to be like, you have to see the same bullshit 3 times. So I'm doing, like, I just did a video for her. Drew will do it. And
she's been on The Ultimate Fighter. She could punch us hard, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I tried to get her. Can I talk? I can probably talk about this. No, I don't know. But I tried to, I want her to get Joanna for us because her and Joanna still talk. And she sent me like messages of her and Joanna. And I was like, oh, I want to get her so bad. All right, here's what I'm going to say. Now, a lot of you right now, you're being inundated with content. And it's like, well, Drew and I have an Instagram page, and Drew and Jamie, like, they have a podcast, but like, look, fucking Russell Crowe's doing an Instagram live. Because like every celebrity right now,
dude,
is doing the same thing. They're all doing, it's like, here's John Mayer with this guy. And they're all doing
all of the publicists and all of the agents got together and is like, guys, these are your times every day for 30 seconds. You're going to get on with some random fan. If you want to kill yourself, if you really, really want to kill yourself,
guys, like if you were thinking about killing yourself, but you were like, you know, I need to get put over the, what can push me over the edge? I'm lacking just a little bit of motivation.
Look, I'm a pretty healthy individual mentally. I'm very far from the edge. I can barely see it over the horizon, but I went
and I am teetering on the edge constantly.
Cover your ears, earphones.
Okay.
I went sprinting towards the edge the moment I went into, just out of sheer morbid curiosity, Justin Bieber's live feed.
Oh, guys, I had to talk Drew down.
So bad. It's him walking around with his phone, talking absolutely monotone, no interest whatsoever with every random fan that he just sort of lets on. They're freaking out. They're doing like the bubbly. It's Justin Bieber. He's like, hi. So what's your name?
That was like our Jeff Glover.
That's cool. Where are you from? Every time. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, I gotta either turn it off or die. Those are my options.
Guys, I know I've been very personal today, and maybe it's because I'm a little stoned, but Robin Williams talked me down from my depression several times. And when the man who talks you down from your depression kills himself, you go, I'm fucked. There's something wrong with me. Drew came to me and was like, Jamie, I know that you're probably hiding under a table eating bread thinking about ways to kill yourself right now. I just went to Justin Bieber's live. Can you please talk me off the edge? And to be honest with you, the only reason that I didn't kill myself that day is because I was briefly distracted by trying to get Drew not to kill himself. And, you know, here we are to deliver you guys, again, a fantastic podcast. Follow us.
Episode 19. Woo!
Episode 19, Jamie didn't kill himself. Bam, 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 bam. So, now here's the thing. My point is this. You guys might want to be like, well, Rear Naked Radio, blah, blah, blah. Look at all these like Justin Biebers and stuff. Everyone's going live. Yeah, at the exact same time because they all have the same fucking PR company because they're soulless hacks. But what happens when Corona is done? What happens when the quarantine is over? You think Justin Bieber is going to want to fucking talk to you? No. But who is pathetic enough to stick around for all their little pathogens? Jamie Kilstein and Drew Weatherhead. We are the sloppy best friend that you should have married a long time ago, but you were busy fucking a bunch of Justin Biebers at the bar, thinking that like hotness is going to bring you love. No, we were there. We have always been there for you. Pre-corona, post-corona, Rear Naked Radio is not going anywhere.
And we will be there for you every Monday like a pathetic, lonely, friend-zoned motherfucker who has a new guest to try to entice you to like us a little more.
How about now? We got Greg Jackson. Well, he's not on Instagram. Yeah, but he's really smart. Touch it.
What Jamie is really trying to circle around to is we are going to be there for you. That's nailed it. We're going to be there for all of our favorite pathogens, whether there's corona or not. We can start our own plague in your ear.
We're in your brain. And you know, I said that to I thought about us being the sloppy best friend, and that made me laugh very hard. But in reality, it's like we are stepping it the fuck up. Look, a lot of people, especially this new to a podcast, if they lost half of their fucking income, they'd be like, all right, well, we're done. Time to go like do regular people shit. But Drew and I are doubling down. I mean, we are working all day, whether it's on the Instagram, whether it's on trying to get interviews. I'm trying to make videos to blow us up from this other angle. Like literally every day we work on the podcast, and now we're adding extra podcasts. And I'm not like, oh, fucking feel bad for us, give us money, whatever. We're doing it because it was really this like put up or shut up moment where I was like, oh, I do love this podcasting community, instead of like, yeah, well, I guess I got to go work on that fucking script. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I really wanted to triple down on this. So we will be there for you guys as much. And if you are interested, if you're like, what the fuck are they talking about with this gym sponsorship thing, we are giving a heavy discounted rate to do an entire episode. It'll probably be like half hour or whatever on your gym. We do not want money from the gym owners. We want to help the gym owners. We want to bring attention to the gym. We want to inspire their students to keep their memberships going, and to promote their gym to their friends and whatever. And essentially what it is it's going to be like a Rally the Troops podcast. And so we want you rich ass students who can afford it, who can afford like 5 gis. I asked Drew, I go, is this like the right amount of money? And he was like, they spend more on gis. And I'm like, right. And so so if you're interested, you can DM at Rear Naked Radio on Instagram, or you can write in rearnakedradio@gmail.com.
Podcast.
Rear Naked Radio podcast at gmail.com, and I will send you the info, and then we can get you on the schedule. We already have the first week, so we'll start this next week, I think.
Yeah, pretty sick. So last time before we exited out, I gave you guys a mission, all of our pathogens.
Right.
We have a new mission between now and next episode. Here's the thing. Most of you guys, thousands of people every week, are tuning in to the audio, and this is normal for a podcast, but we put a lot of effort into the YouTube. In fact, disproportionately, I put hours into editing.
Oh yeah, you really
video.
do.
I do. The audio, it literally, I just got to strip it from the video and plug it away. Like there's nothing to it, but the video takes a lot. Not to say, oh, woe is Drew, but what I think that's what would make us feel better as a community is our YouTube numbers aren't that great because most people don't watch it. But for the people who are listening, just go over to your YouTube if you're logged in and click subscribe. You never have to watch it if you don't want to watch it, but it helps us. It's easy for you. And that's your mission this week, to go infect our YouTube.
You are talking like the sloppy friend. You don't even have to watch it. Can I just tell people we're dating?
God.
But it's true. And also, I mean, this is something like we're obviously not going to stop the podcast. But yeah, dude, you saying that, I forgot that is a shitload of work where people who do watch us on YouTube start sharing that shit, because if anything is going to go, it's going to be the YouTube. Like I have not figured out why those numbers aren't huge for the amount of like shitty jiu-jitsu content that blows up. I think it's just Drew and I are out of time and like we don't know about like search optimization. But like, so either get the YouTube out there, or we're gonna fucking take it from you. No, we're not. We're weak. We're gonna keep it, but you get it.
Okay, well,
thank you to Greg Jackson. Don't be sexist. Not even sexist. God, this has nothing to do with fucking feminism. It's like, don't be a shitty person.
Yeah, easy. Nailed it.
Okay, yeah, there it is. People are like, but does that mean I have to vote for Hillary Clinton? No. But if someone who was like assaulted is crying, they'll be a fucking monster. Cool, don't do that. Greg Jackson, Doug, follow us on Instagram.
Stepsisters.
Go to originating.com. Yeah. Stop. Can we all go to Pornhub and just search like not related sexual partners or something so that my front page can be different? For the love of God. By the way, now some of the big Pornhub people, they're just like putting on face masks and they're like Corona themed. And I'm like, this seems inappropriate, you guys.
That's funny. That's like when Captain Crunch was like, whoops, all marshmallows or whatever. It's like, that's not what I came here for.
No,
now it's masks.
That's horrible. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week. Our next two interviews are fucking good ones, so get excited, and I'm sure we'll talk to you on Instagram. Thanks for all the support, guys.
See you guys.